Hello, everyone. My name is Garvin, and today we're going to take a break from the Greeks to talk about science fiction because I do actually review books. Today we looked at the fifth book in a six-book and counting series, Spacer's Luck. Now, before I get into this, I would like to make a quick disclaimer because I prefer to be honest with my viewers. I know Mr. Stevens, the author. He's a friend of mine, and he's a patron of this channel. That said, I don't sell good reviews, or if I did, my pride and vanity would make it so that Mr. Stevens couldn't afford one, in all honesty. Also, I will be calling him Mr. Stevens in this video, but that's because I like to be respectful to the authors whose work I'm discussing, even if I'm tearing the work apart. It is, however, my honest opinion that he is a good writer, and I enjoy reading his work. The review is going to be linked below in the description, so I'm not going to talk about the book too much here. I'm instead going to talk about the protagonist of the first four books and a major character in the fifth book, Captain James Henry. Now, fair warning, there will be some mild spoilers here, as I'll be talking about his character arc throughout the series. Before I do that, let me sketch in a little bit about the universe. But for a more in depth look, I would encourage you to click on the link below to the whole passel of book reviews set in this universe, where I'll tackle that in much greater depth. That said, to paraphrase another work of popular fiction, there's no time to explain, so let me sum up. The coalition of Terra and the neutral worlds were settled by people running away from the totalitarian government of the League of Soul. The League pursued, among other things, a state enforced mandatory atheism for all of its citizens. It also declared that it was the only legitimate and rightful government of all humanity. So, not a lot of room for compromise. Because of this, a good number of folks decided fleeing the league was a good decision, and those fleeing tended to be religious or would become so. The coalition of Terra was the single biggest nation founded by these people, with many other founding single state worlds in an area that would become known as the neutral worlds when the League found these people and promptly invaded the coalition of Terra without so much a how do you do? This universe was created by Mr. Daniel Gibs, and the main series is known as the Fight the Good Fight series. I have reviewed some of those books as well, and there will be links to those reviews below. Captain James Henry was a Coalition of Terra officer. When the series starts, however, he has been drummed out of the service in disgrace and left to make his living as the captain of a small trading starship, the Shadow Wolf. I like the name. Often, he does things that aren't entirely legal, but maintains a level of moral conduct so he can face himself in the mirror. So he's very comparable to characters like Malcolm Reynolds from Firefly or Han Solo from Star Wars, in my view, although he does lean closer to the Malcolm Reynolds side of things. When the series starts, he's a deeply wounded but not completely broken man. He's lost faith in God and most of his fellow human beings. He is, however, devoted to his crew and willing to go to great lengths to ensure their care and protection. I will admit, I am passingly fond of the archetype of the small time space captain. There's a lot of room in it for variation. All you need is a captain with a somewhat dramatic past, a willingness to bend or break the law, and a ship with entertaining characters. For example, Captain Henry is nowhere near as smarmy as Han Solo. In fact, last time I watched A New Hope, I realized that Han Solo reminded me a lot of a frat bro who really hadn't grown up and was struggling to become a better person. On the flip side, you also have people like Captain Malcolm Reynolds who are mature, rather decent people, but increasingly feel like they don't have room to be good people anymore because the universe, in their experience, punishes goodness. Captain Henry is a lot like that, feeling that he cannot afford to risk much against the cruelty and danger of the greater universe because experience has taught him that the only reward is greater loss and pain for good deeds. Captain Henry's character arc is to allow himself to believe in something greater than himself and his crew again. He has to learn that he can be good and stand for something besides taking care of his own in a cold and uncaring universe, even though that might come with consequences. Now, I will note to folks there is a religious element in this arc for this book series, but I'm going to be honest with you and say that doesn't bother me. I feel there should be room for characters in science fiction to have religious beliefs and even profoundly religious experiences. Now, there should also be room for atheist experience as well, and experiences that just don't have anything to do with religious faith one way or the other. The genre is much bigger than some people give it credit for. It's okay to have these different experiences in it. In the series, Mr. Stevens does a good job of bringing Captain Henry to his final realization, and to do that, he first takes Captain Henry to an even lower point than where we started from, because sometimes you have to strike rock bottom before you can rebuild. Not always, but sometimes. The trials and tribulations that Captain Henry goes through are what forces him to confront himself and to grow. Now, I'm going to step back, talk on a more general level here for any future writers who might be listening. If you want your characters to grow and become better from where they started from, they need to lose sometimes, and they need to learn from their losses. Mr. Stevens understands that and has Captain Henry lose emotionally and powerfully at times. Now, that's a risky thing to write, but you got to do it. Also, you can learn from winning, but the lessons learned in losing tend to stick with you longer and harder. On the flip side, it's also possible to learn the wrong lessons from loss, which is how Captain Henry got into the state we first found him in. Which is why you also got to let your characters win as well. Victory tends to reinforce the lessons you've learned. If you do something and it works for you, you tend to keep doing it, right? Setting that balance of loss and gain and the lessons your characters learn from both is a major part of keeping a character arc moving and keeping your readers in suspense with that arc. In this case, it's moving Captain Henry from a bitter, mostly closed off man to someone willing to open up and take risks for what he believes in and reach out to people in the world around him. Done well, you have a rather powerful arc that will stay in your reader's mind, which is what Mr. Stevens accomplishes here in the first four books. For example, you can also compare Malcolm Reynolds from the beginning of the Firefly series to the one at the end of the movie Serenity and consider those differences. Or consider Han Solo's behavior in A New Hope, where he's perfectly happy to just leave with everything he does in Return of the Jedi, right? Mr. Stevens has done a good job here with Captain Henry. And I think if you read this series, you'll end up agreeing with me as you see him go from a really bad place to an even darker place and then emerge as a better, stronger person than when he started. As always, I'd like to thank everyone who watched this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like or a comment or even consider subscribing. It really helps me out against the Dreadlord algorithm. Terror be on his name. Next week, we're going to look at kidnapping in mythology and literature that was voted for by my patrons. It's going to be a discussion and a half, I tell you that. After that, I'll be continuing with some patron requests. If you'd like to vote on these requests, consider joining us at the linked patron below for as little as $1 a month. Also, special thank you to our biggest patron, Big Steve. Thanks, man. We appreciate your support here. Until next week, everyone, stay safe Keep reading.